Welcome to another insightful episode of Me and My Health Up. The purpose of this podcast is to enhance and enlighten the well-being of others. I'm your host, Anthony Harcher. I'm a clinical nutritionist and lifestyle medicine specialist. This podcast is all about love with Miranda Claire, the Soulmate Coach, a relationship and mindset expert, speaker, coach, writer, plus matchmaker. Miranda has been a relationship expert for over 11 years after studying and working extensively over the last 2 decades in the areas of relationships, human behaviour, positive psychology, mindset, matchmaking, and personal transformation and development. Miranda is an internationally certified master coach and trainer on these subjects and certifies and coaches other coaches and psychologists. Welcome, Miranda.
Wow, what an intro. Bit of a mouthful there. I love that no one can say the word matchmaker without raising their eyebrows, though. It's always funny. I kind of wait for it. And as the kind of love doctor, which I've been called, I call myself the soulmate coach, but as long as it's got love in there somewhere, I won't complain. I actually even notice your last name has the word heart in the beginning of your surname. So it's definitely going to be all things love. And conveniently, we're kind of tiptoeing into February and we've got Valentine's Day coming up. So whether your listeners are single or they're soulmated or they would like to be, or maybe they're dating themselves at the moment. Self-dating is a really on-trend way to kind of describe the whole self-love and just self-healing period, which is really healthy as well. I hopefully will be adding a lot of value for no matter where you are on the soulmate spectrum.
And that's a really good point, Miranda, because often when people leave a relationship, and certainly there's a lot of that happening around that new year, new person, new you, they're looking at the relationship and thinking, do I want to put up with this for another year? And so that, some people are looking at the exit door, others are out the exit door. And that, once you're out the exit door or you're looking to get out, what's the first point, what's the first recommendation you provide for your clients around this, whether they rediscover their love for their self before they find and get into another relationship? Is that, the most important thing? So I really wanted to get your insight into what people should do if they've just exited a relationship or about to.
Absolutely. That's a really great question. And it's nice to have that question because it brings up some amazing answers. What I would say is, there's two schools of thought. One school of thought is called a breakup because it's broken. And another school of thought is don't leave until you've left every stone unturned, because the only thing worse than that immediate rejection that a breakup involves is regret, in case you've made the wrong decision or perceived that you may have, or there's a lack of closure for one or both parties. And so it's really about wanting to really honor both of those sides of the equation and do the work, where I call it consciously breaking up if you're going to, and I call it consciously breaking through if that's what's meant to be. And I truly believe that if two people are meant to be together, nothing will keep them apart. And if two people are not meant to be together, nothing is going to keep them together. And when I say meant to be, you can interpret that as a little bit more woo-woo, spiritual, divine fate, or whatever you want. Or you can look at it a bit more practical, like if our personalities are not meant to mesh together, because our values are different, our parenting styles are different, our communication styles are different. That's another a bit more, if you want to look at left brain or right brain reasons of what I mean for not meant to be. Let's face it, you could choose to be into a relationship with anyone, but the reality is with the right person, where there's a lot of compatibility and communication and synergy and our values are aligned, it's going to be a very different relationship to where you have two people where you do not have that stuff, or you have the opposite of it. And what I would say is a big part of the breakup journey, if you are in that place, would absolutely to be going, well, look, this could be broken, or this could have potential, but I think we should do the work on self-love and on really getting the breakthroughs that we came together to get as a couple, because either we will find our spark if there's the potential, the willingness, the commitment for that to happen, and we'll be glad we did. So will our families, so will our finances usually, because it's obviously more involved than just a breakup. And what I say is I'm a lot cheaper than a divorce if people give me any kind of objections. But if you guys are not meant to be together, then you can literally break up knowing you haven't left a stone unturned. And you're not going to wake up at 3 a.m. a year from now and go, what have I done? Or date some person on Tinder and the date doesn't go well and go, God, I miss being in a relationship. You're literally going to say, look, I'm ready for the ups and downs of singledom because I've done the ups and downs of relationshipdom. And that person and that relationship just wasn't right, but I've got the learnings and the breakthroughs. Because if you don't get those learnings and you just up and leave, chances are you haven't actually got the lesson and you've just jumped out. And what people often do is they will date the same person in a different body in their next relationship because they haven't actually resolved what it is about them that attracted that lesson in the first place. Not to say that it's their fault or shame them or do anything like that. But at the end of the day, if my clients come to me and they say, I keep dating narcissists or I keep dating emotionally unavailable men or women, I say, well, that's really unfortunate, but what's the common denominator? And if they're not really knowing what the answer is, I point them to the nearest mirror. Because yes, those people are running patterns that are toxic, but what bait are you putting on your hook that makes you irresistible to that pattern? And until both of you do that work, you're likely going to keep running that pattern. And so I would say, if you're thinking of breaking up, do the work around self-love, get you back to a 10 out of 10, deep dive into the relationship, possibly with some couples coaching with someone like me, or if you have the toolbox, do it yourself. But you'll very rarely be able to have the same level of communication or blind spots pointed out within a relationship that you can with that third party mediating, especially if they're skilled at doing so. And that way, one of a couple of things will happen. You'll either work it out, be glad you did, or you'll break up consciously with a whole bunch of breakthroughs, knowing you didn't leave a stone unturned, no unfinished business for either party, and you can go out into the new chapter of your life knowing that you're done with that chapter and you let go with love, light, and gratitude, and you hopefully avoid a really expensive legal fee or anything like that. Because whilst the relationship didn't work romantically, it doesn't mean you can't exit out of it like friends that are grateful for teaching each other some stuff.
That's a fantastic response. And you've brought up so many things that I'm thinking, what shall I ask next? But
Good.
what's on my mind is, I guess it relates to a personal experience that I had, being a male and not being a great communicator. And it's sort of, and you're blindsided to picking up the communication from your partner, or in my case, it was my former wife.
Mm.
And so I had no, like, so when it all happened to me, when the breakup happened, I was totally gobsmacked as to where did this come from, and this is a naive male, just no idea. And so I'm thinking there could be like one partner that's been contemplating it for a while, and it could have been the past year, whilst we've been in this COVID-19 situation and just not enjoying the company of one another or the energy, and probably both of them. And then that partner's, just on the verge of saying, let's have this discussion. I'm ready for this. And then the other partner just hasn't come around to picking up on all the signals from the past year that things are great. So I think, is there some sort of way to approach this subject so that, because I really like the approach that you mentioned in terms of really, not leaving a stone unturned, raising everything, really, self-reflecting, reflecting both on the relationship, on why we got together. So I love all those key points, but I'm thinking there's that real difficult step to make, to think that, I'm in this space, but I don't think my partner is, yeah. So how do you bridge that gap?
There's so many things I want to say. In the same way you've got a million questions, I've got a million answers. And I think you're a brilliant communicator. So I think that relationship ending probably was the breakthrough that recalibrated that area of your life. Because look at you now, you do it for a living and you're amazing at it. And what I would say is everyone wants intimacy, but no one wants intimacy, which is what leads to intimacy. Intimacy, as in let down the walls, get vulnerable, be transparent, have the hard conversations. And don't call them the hard conversations. Don't call them the arguments. Don't call them the fights, but call them us being safe to be real. Because the more authentic and real we can be, and the vehicle for that is authentic, tender communication done calmly and done artfully, and it's a skill like anything else. You know, I wouldn't expect you guys to get a canvas out and necessarily paint a masterpiece. Wouldn't expect you guys, if you've never done public speaking, to get up and be Tony Robbins. Wouldn't expect you just to wake up tomorrow with a law degree and understand all of the legalities in a given case. And people, I think, because it is so natural and innate to attract or want or crave a partner, I think we think sometimes we're just born with the operator manual of how to nail it once they're there, or how to navigate it if they're not. And it's an actual skill, just like having that law degree. I certainly am incredibly intuitive, but everything that I teach is stuff that I've actually spent the time, energy, and care to learn from textbooks, from mentors, from courses, from books. I've applied it to my own relationships. I've worked with thousands of clients and applied it to theirs, seen it work, fine-tuned it, seen it work even better. And it's some of it is really counterintuitive, let alone not just straightforward common sense. And regular communication where both parties are safe to be real and they actually lean forward and step forward and look forward to emptying the cup is what I call it, which just means safe to be real. What is on your mind? And I think we're in a society where a lot of people have unresolved wounds around being assertive, and being assertive is different to being aggressive. And I think sometimes we think having honest chats with our partner, we mistake being assertive and calm and loving with being aggressive. And so we either do the conflict avoidance where we build it, we build it, we build it, we snap, or we kind of do the snap early on because we don't realize there's a shade of gray between bottling up and building up. And that shade of gray is actually being able to say, sweetheart, is now a good time? I've got something I want to share with you. And you actually make it exciting and smile when you do, rather than doing the, have you got a minute? We need to talk, because no one wants to feel like they've been called into the principal's office. And all of these little techniques build positive association, because we are constantly, every single thing that we relate to in our world, we're associating pleasure or pain. Pleasure or pain. Is this fight, flight, freeze, or step forward? And we need to train our mates' nervous system. And also, if we're single and dating and we're on a Tinder date, we need to train that stranger's nervous system that it's safe to be real. I'm on your team. I'm kind. I'm your friend. I'm not a threat. And until you can help someone's nervous system lower all those unconscious walls, they're either not going to hear a thing you have to say, they're not going to want to, or your fight and flight mechanism will fire up. You're not going to have a thing to say or want to. And before you know it, you've either got two ships in the night not communicating and doing the avoidant thing, or you've got them lashing out, being too, kind of aggressive, wounded animals. And in either of those situations, there's zero communication that's effective. So you need to really be able to have that safe to be real communication, and prevention is better than cure. But if you're at that stage that one or both of you feel like walking away, well, it's never too late. It ain't over until, the fat lady sings, or until you've seen the Soulmate Coach and we've turned every stone under 10 times. But I really do believe safe to be real. And you need to have rituals around that and strategies around that where there's beautiful body language. It's something we step forward to. We don't flight or freeze around that. I'm a big fan of the walk and talk. So this is relating to anchoring. What anchoring is, it's the way Pavlov's dogs did that experiment, fed the dogs, rung a bell, and neurologically, the dogs associated eating with the bell. So they could be fully fed. They could have had, double servings, but you'd ring that bell and they'd start salivating, ready for food again. Human beings get anchored or locked in neurologically to so many triggers. Sometimes you can just see your partner's face and they go, can we have a chat? And you're already anchored to that time you were 5 humiliated in the principal's office, that time your partner almost left you, all those partners that cheated on you, being bullied when you were 6, and all that association because of that tone, that face. So we've got to be really cautious, and triggers or anchoring can be visual, like a person's face, auditory, like just a tone of voice for a certain sentence, a certain song. It can be kinesthetic. So if you grab someone's arm whilst they're in a certain emotion, they can link the two together in a nervous system fashion. So why I like the walk and talk is the home and the favorite restaurants and the date night stay sacred spaces purely for fun, friendship, and romance and rapport. Walks and talks means you pick a new park. It's not your favorite park, so they're not going to ruin your favorite park. And you walk and talk. You don't need to make eye contact. You don't need to be analyzing body language. You've got endorphins flowing. You're not anchored to the couch. You're not anchored to your favorite restaurant that you're going to destroy with this honest conversation. And you're walking, and guess what? You're matching and mirroring each other's body language. You're in rapport. You're shoulder to shoulder, which represents teamwork. It's us versus the problem rather than you versus me. Sitting opposite each other, you feel a bit more like, Tony Soprano on The Sopranos, kind of, talking to one of his enemies. And that's not what an honest conversation should be. Let's associate it with exercise out of the home, and then get it off your chest. And then you turn to each other. When each other are talking, you don't listen to retaliate. You listen to hear. And you imagine, what's it like to be you? And you come from your heart and you really empathize, and you imagine, what if this was 100% my responsibility to fix? Let me hear them so I can fix it. And then when you talk, you want them to do the same. They really listen from their heart. And they think, if this was 100% my responsibility to fix, what would I need to hear and do? And if you have two people aggressively giving rather than wondering what they're getting or not getting, you have a loving relationship where everyone is topped up. And we top up ourselves through self-love in the background. It's no one else's job to fix us, to be our therapist, to make us happy, to make us whole. That's our job. Our relationship is here for love, romance, connection, aligned goals, adventures. And we sometimes get the roles all mixed up. They're not our parents or our exes either. And I, at the end of that walk, encourage both people to look in the eye, hold hands, be face to face at that point, and say, person one, have you emptied your cup? And person two says, yes. The other person does the same. Have you emptied your cup? Yes. And if there's even a bit of a pause or a kind of, we keep walking and we stop until we can both say yes. We hug more than 20 seconds because it takes that long for the nervous system to go, we're good. That links positivity to the honest conversation. So does all the endorphins. And then we go home. We go to our favorite restaurant. We clean the house. But the house and the favorite spots and the date nights and the anniversaries are a fight-free location. And you need the discipline to do that.
That's fantastic. I really, you answered, a couple of questions that were raised earlier on when you were answering the question that you've, then answered later on, and those were around men and being vulnerable and opening up and self-expressing. And so that's where I see the challenge for men around the communication, whereas women generally don't have the same sort of they're more open, and they're more willing to provide that this is who I am. And then the other one was from a women's perspective around, you said that assertiveness, and I could see that's, could be a particular challenge for women, and whereas for men, it's the vulnerability.
Yeah.
But then what I liked was that walking and talking, because it removed both of those, in some way. So for men, that thing of, I don't like, showing my vulnerability. Well, as you said, you're walking shoulder to shoulder. You're a team. You feel, united. You're not looking at someone's face and, picking up, concerned about their body language and what are they going to think if I say this. You can just sort of let it out and then put it out to the universe, and then they pick up everything from you because they're walking shoulder to shoulder with you. And so for the men, it's a lot easier to be vulnerable when they're doing this walk to talk and not face to face. And then for women to, I guess, show this a bit more assertiveness and to really, empty their cup. This process is so much easier. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Often in relationships, it's really weird, but people will either overshare in an aggressive way, they will undershare in an avoidant way, or they'll say the opposite of what they mean in a really confusing way, which is like, no, don't get me anything for my birthday. You better get me that ring. And so, where communication is key, actually saying what you mean, how you mean it, having rituals like the walk and talk to allow for it and encourage it. And I would say, do sweat the small stuff. We're in a culture of don't sweat the small stuff. I'm like, absolutely sweat the small stuff, because this is a positive conversation. This is building intimacy. Chats like this make the friendship better. They make the sex better. They make the big arguments better. And I personally would rather get good at doing the walk and talk when it's about a little bit of, slobbiness and cleanliness around the house. And if you've gotten used to doing that every day, if you have to, make it your ritual after work to decompress and help each other decompress. And I would say do it every day, lock it in, make it a ritual. Worst case, do it once a week or bi-weekly, because you get the practice on the small stuff, which builds the comfort zone and the expertise for the big stuff. And it's exactly the same format. And what I would say is, within the emptying the cup of both people, a real focus on the love stuff, love, known as the feedback sandwich, is really important. So rather than just going, what I'm effed off about is this, sometimes that can be cathartic. And if you have two people that have that communication style, that may work for you. But to go on the safe side, I recommend this for all styles. But, there's no correlation between really expressive communication / arguing styles and divorce. Some of those relationships stand the test of time. I've studied the Harvard statistics on what makes or breaks relationships. But what I would say is a feedback sandwich. So person one is emptying their cup, and it needs to be love, feedback, love. And as much as possible, it needs to be in the context of you owning it. So rather than you did this, you did that, realize there's three fingers pointed back at you and one finger pointed at the partner. Don't focus on the one finger pointed at them. Focus at the three back at you when you describe the same thing. For instance, we're walking. Okay, what I love about you as my partner is you're taking the time to do this walk and talk, which was suggested. And I'm really moved that you're making that kind of effort for us. I love when you did dinner this week. I love when you played with the kids' sport. I love when you made the bed just because, when usually I do that. All of that was awesome. And I noticed all of that. All of these compliments gets the person associating positivity, their nervous system chilling down. And then you can say, cool, if I was to speak my truth today, and let's just say it's a daily chat or a need to have walk and talk, it would be, look, if I speak my truth today, I'm feeling like a little bit, okay, I'm thinking of a typical issue that I will deal with my clients, maybe control freakishness, where one couple feels, that the other one is being controlling in some way. Let's say that I was expressing that. If I was doing it in a finger pointing way, I'd say, what the thing I need to tell you is you're being a real control freak to me and you make me feel disempowered. That's a really attacky comment where it's all about you. What you want to do is focus on the fingers facing you, even in the feedback section, and say, the feedback that I would have is, I've noticed that I'm feeling feelings of a lack of freedom within myself. I noticed I'm feeling quite triggered lately. I'm noticing I'm feeling kind of a little bit trapped. And the common theme is the things that have me feel those feelings in my body, or they bring up those issues, which I own are my issues that are probably being activated, is when you sent me that text on Wednesday like that, there was a kind of relationship between that text and me feeling that. And I'm not blaming you. I own that it probably is my past shit coming up, but I just wanted to bring it up with you so that I can work on the past shit and maybe you can work on the text. And as a team, it can be us versus the problem, because I don't want to bottle this stuff up, because the grain of sand can escalate and become the snowball. And I would rather sweat the small stuff while it's a minor irritation, because I love you so much. And here's the other love. I'm closing off the love sandwich now. I love you so much. You're my soulmate. You're the love of my life. And I feel so safe to be real with you about the teeny stuff all the way through to the massive stuff. And I adore you. Imagine if both people did that and then they both said, the cup's empty, big hug, let's go home.
Yeah.
Every day.
That's magic. That is so awesome. That, just simple, really simple practice, but the way in which you've broken it down step by step, you can see the power in every step and the importance of doing every step that you mentioned. It's very empowering. So I really thank you for sharing those wonderful tips, because
I missed one of your wonderful questions. I just remembered about the male versus feminine, and while it pops in my mind, sorry to interrupt you, just want to pop it in there because it's such a good thing to talk about. There's these things called masculine and feminine energy, and I think that's an unfortunate term for them, because they then have the stigma, masculine or feminine. No guy wants to be called you're a really feminine guy, and no woman wants to be called, wow, has anyone ever told you you're really masculine? Doesn't generally land as a compliment. Some, there may be the reversal of that, where, there's certain chicks that are like, cool, and certain guys are like, I know, right? But generally speaking, that I wish we could rebrand it, because it's such a powerful dynamic to understand within relationships with self and with soulmates. But let's relabel it. Masculine energy we could call oak tree energy. Feminine energy we could call water energy. Notice that neither has a gender. It's just one is very firm, rigid, and what you see is what you get, and a really strong oak tree. And the other one is really flowing and fluid and nurturing and goes around the oak tree. That's what we mean by masculine and feminine energy. The oak tree is the ability to say no. Water is the ability to say yes. Oak tree is the ability to be really stubborn and firm. Feminine energy is the ability to be flexible. And we actually, as all human beings, regardless of our sexuality, our sexual preference, our born gender, all of those things, we actually need a balance of both. And we actually crave a balance of both within our partner. And the problem is most people have a little bit of a wound with either their masculine or feminine energy. And it often has a lot to do with the parenting they got as a child and them associating pleasure or pain to masculine or feminine energy, and then adopting that in the form of either overly being obsessed with one and overly rejecting, ignoring, or neglecting the other. And we actually need to be like a yin yang as a man and as a woman, where it's like, I can say no, but I can say yes. I can be firm, but I can be flexible. I can be really selfless, but I can really self-care and be selfish. And it's finding that fusion of both those energies that we need. And when you mention the talk, it kind of neutralizes the playing field. And whether you're a man or a woman, if you have a tendency to be very water-like and be scared of being firm, that walking in that power and that ritual and that structure of the feedback sandwich has you to be safe, to be real, and step more into your power. And when you're maybe more likely to get really aggressive, this is how it is, my way or the highway, having those boundaries around, you have to listen to hear, you have to take responsibility, you have to let both people empty their cup, you have to be equal and non-intimidating in your body language. That really helps the more staunch oak tree energy to soften and equalize. And that way both, it's a really great reprogramming of the masculine and feminine energy, and being safe to be real and being vulnerable, but then realizing that vulnerability is your ultimate strength. So there's actually a relationship where the water waters the tree, and the tree has that relationship with the water, and vulnerability and strength are actually the same thing.
Great response. So I really love it from that balance perspective, and taking away the labeling from, masculine and feminine to nature. And yeah, and so that's beautiful in itself. It's very calming just thinking of an oak tree and water, as opposed to masculine, tough, and, feminine, maybe a bit weak and vulnerable, or so I really love that delabeling, and that binding of balance, because we certainly need more balance. We need and we need to have that flexibility and flow, and from a male perspective, and women need to, when the times calls, to be strong and steadfast and say no, and say no with conviction. So
Totally. And really interesting, because with the oak tree, often there's a misconception that that is strength and the water energy is weak, but that is a completely incorrect belief, because a certain oak tree, the bigger and stronger it is, also means the older it is, and it could have some cavities. And the first bolt of lightning, because of all its rigidity, it will crack it down. Whereas that same water that was flowing around it, it might be a little bit more quietly confident with the initial strength that it portrays. But if you look at water hitting up against a rock or a building, it will erode it over time. So water has a different kind of strength, but they both are needed. You're actually going to have more strength overall if you can have masculine and feminine energy, and then the wisdom and intuition to go, is this oak tree strength that I'm drawing on right now, in the sense of boundaries, assertiveness, all of that stuff, or am I going to draw on my feminine strength right now, which is chipping away at it, calmly being there. Flexibility is key here, and they're both actually strengths. And whether even in same-sex couples, you often see the relationship sort of arrange itself so that there's a divvying of masculine and feminine energy between, even though they're the same gender. And that is because we have a deep unconscious kind of understanding that we need both energies. But what I would say is, don't just try and be in a partnership where you've got a masculine and a feminine. Build the masculine and feminine within you, and then be in a relationship where you can step into what feels more comfortable for you within that dynamic, because then you're going to polarize each other, which means more attraction, more intimacy, more passion. Because, you know, when you have that difference, it's like a magnet. The two different poles connect, even if you're in a same-sex relationship. But within the individuals, they've healed both their masculine, feminine, and can do both. But together we like to sit like this or like this.
Fantastic. I really love that analogy, but of the oak tree. Oak tree perceived as strong, and it is strong when it's youthful, but when it's old, it's more vulnerable and more susceptible to breaking. Whereas water's got that more, I guess, long-term strength and endurance, and as you said, wisdom. And I related that to that medical analogy of acute and chronic. So, like the oak tree has that more acute sort of strength, whereas the water has that chronic.
Yeah,
And the acute, over time will break, right? Because if you
absolutely.
have an acute issue that's not dealt with, you will eventually break. Whereas that chronic sort of, it withers away at you over a period of time. But in this case, it's more that enduring strength. So yeah, really that analogy was amazing, and thanks for sharing. And the fact that it's connected with nature and it's connected with that balance of yin and yang, and having it, a good mix and balance and dynamic state of both within, and being able to be fluid and adjusting, to when the other person may need you to express, a bit of feminine energy, and
Absolutely.
relate to them, and so you can further connect with them and
If the
help them.
lightning, if the lightning did hit the tree would need to float on the water and be nurtured by the water. And the water actually is what's been watering that tree to have it grow that tall. And there's this, synergy between the two, and they support each other, they borrow from each other, and it's one is not better than the other. We need both, like that perfect yin and yang. But then we need that sweet spot in the middle, which is called wisdom and intuition, to know when we're going to draw upon what, or when we're just going to be balanced and sort of sit in the middle.
Beautiful, beautiful analogy. There's so much that's going around in my mind, and the first thing that's coming to me at this stage is, we've spoken a lot about that couple that may be breaking up, and to initiate the conversation and to not leave a stone unturned to make sure it's the right decision, or maybe it's time to mend because you've reconnected. And now I'm thinking about that person that's just left the relationship that may have left some stones unturned. And I know this is going to open up a whole new conversation. I really want to save it for another episode with you, as opposed to just
Okay,
touching the surface.
sign me up.
Yeah, we'll certainly we'll book it in, and we'll do part 2 of this amazing series on all things
Absolutely.
love with Miranda Claire.
We got to give the singles some love. So, there's the ones that just went through the breakup and are in the healing stage. And then we got the other ones that are like, I'm single and ready to mingle. What do I do now? And I do matchmaking and help with the mingling component. And the common theme with everything I do is life is relationships, and it all starts with the relationship you have with yourself. So I would love to do a bit of a mini series with you. And yeah, I love it. Even if I help one person, that's what I live for. That's my drug. So anything I can do to get in front of more people and help them any way that I can in the area of love and relationships, like, sign me up.
Awesome. Yep. So I've committed to it. We're doing a mini
We're doing
series, all things
it.
love with Miranda Claire. So yeah, stay tuned for the next episode. But if you can't wait, and you're in that sort of point where you thought Miranda's brought up some amazing tips on how I can reignite this spark in this relationship, or at least leave the relationship with no unturned stone, how can listeners, viewers, best get in touch with you, Miranda?
Look, I'm on all your usual social media platforms, but I wouldn't want you to get mixed up with Miranda Kerr or Marie Claire, because I'm Miranda Claire. I'm called the Soulmate Coach. So on Instagram, it's just at the little signal at the Soulmate Coach. My email is miranda@mirandaclaireinternational.com. and it's spelled Miranda, Miranda, and Claire is spelled Claire, and all the rest is easy to guess. And either of those would probably be great, Instagram or email. For those of you that are a bit more old school or running around like a crazy person like me, I spend majority of my day either in sessions or seminars or with soulmates. So sometimes a good old fashioned text can be good, but my number is 0451 781 110. Notice all of the ones because one is the soulmate number, 1111. And yeah, I know I talk fast. You might need to slow that down to get it again. But
I'll
yeah,
put it in.
reach out to Anthony or put a message below wherever you see this. And between myself and the amazing Anthony, who is absolutely incredible and certainly my go-to, I send all my clients to him when it comes to wellness. He's absolutely sensational at what he does. One of my clients, as a gesture of self-love, felt very drawn to going plant-based and wanted to do it the right way. Didn't hesitate on sending them to the amazing Anthony. Same with anyone that wants to lose weight or transform their energy, gut health, whatever it is. So if you want either of us, post below, and I'm sure we'll match make you with one or another or each other or whatever we need to do to help.
Absolutely, Miranda.
Yeah.
I'll include those links in the show notes, so yeah, people can click on the link if they don't pick it up in the audio because they're more maybe they're more visual person. So yeah,
let's make life easy.
yeah, and yeah, so I just wanted to thank you again, Miranda. Thanks for sharing your wisdom, your experience with our listeners today. For listeners, if you liked the episode, please like it, share it with others that could benefit, and stay tuned for more insightful episodes of All Things Love with Miranda Claire mini series.
Yay! Everyone, thanks for having me.
You're welcome, Miranda. Thanks for joining us.